This presentation will provide a brief summary of the book Men of Science, Men of God, and suggest ways it can be used in the elementary or middle school classroom. To combat the widespread but incorrect opinion that there is no place in the scientific mind for intangibles like faith in a supernatural creator or a divinely inspired book, and the opinion that no scientist can be a creationist, Dr. Henry Morris studied the religious beliefs of many of the world's greatest scientists and wrote this book to share his findings. In contrast with these opinions, Dr. Morris believes there's absolutely no reason why a scientist should not also be a man of religious faith, and demonstrates in this book that many scientists of the past and present have been and are Bible-believing Christians. The book's introduction describes it as an exploratory survey and hopes it will inspire others to investigate the religious belief of scientists more thoroughly. The book includes 101 brief biographies that describe each scientist's professional contributions and Christian testimony. Each scientist included in this book was a scientist of real achievement and significance in the development of science, was a professing Christian who believed in the divine authority of the Bible, and believed that the universe, life, and man were directly and specially created by the transcendent God of the Bible. Although the author might disagree with some of their interpretations of the Bible, he emphasizes the fact that these scientists believed in the divine authority of the Bible. No attempt is made to evaluate their personal conduct as professing Christians. A few were included who were not Christians, but were great scientists who were leaders in the scientific fight against evolution. In the first chapter, Dr. Morris points out that in spite of the notion that there is a fundamental conflict between biblical Christianity and science, thousands of scientists of the past and present have been and are Bible-believing Christians. He also points out that modern science had its origins in a culture at least nominally committed to a belief in the Bible, and at a time in history marked by a great return to biblical faith. Many early scientists believed that the development of science and technology was specifically commissioned by God in his mandate to Adam and Eve. Kepler and others have maintained that studying the world and its processes is merely thinking God's thoughts after him. One of the most compelling chapters in Men of Science, Men of God is Chapter 3, which describes the belief of many founders of science. Included are Leonardo da Vinci, an influential scientist and inventor, Johann Kepler, the founder of physical astronomy, Francis Bacon, who formulated the scientific method, Blaise Pascal, the well-known mathematician, Robert Boyle, the founder of modern chemistry, and numerous others from the fields of natural history, geology, statistics, economics, botany, and medicine. Successive chapters list and describe believing scientists from these historical periods. Chapter 4 includes Sir Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientists who ever lived, Carl Linnaeus, the father of biological taxonomy, as well as leaders in the fields of ecology, geology, astronomy, paleontology, math, and calculus. An outstanding astronomer from this period, William Herschel, is quoted as saying, "The undevout astronomer must be mad." In spite of increasing religious skepticism during the period just before Darwin, faith in God and the Bible were still strong. Believing scientists of this time included physicist Michael Faraday and inventor Samuel Morse, as well as Joseph Henry, John Dalton, George Cuvier, and Humphrey Davy. Joseph Henry was a great physicist from this time period, who was also the first secretary and director of the Smithsonian Institute. In all his experimentation, he was known to stop, worship God, and then pray for divine guidance at important places in his experiments. Two scientists in Chapter 5 made discoveries that were directly related to their belief in the Bible. One was Matthew Maury, who is known as the Pathfinder of the Seas. He believed that if God said there were paths in the seas, it should be possible to find them. He spent the majority of his career charting ocean currents. The other was James Simpson, who discovered chloroform and laid the foundation for modern anesthesiology. It is said that the motivation for his research came from Adam's deep sleep in Genesis. During this time period, John Herschel, another outstanding astronomer like his father William, said that all human discoveries seem to be made only for the purpose of confirming more and more strongly the truths that come from on high and are contained in the sacred writings. Even in the difficult years after the publication of Darwin's book, there were still many outstanding scientists who believed the Bible, including Lord Kelvin, a physical scientist who worked on thermodynamics, Gregor Mendel, the father of genetics, and Louis Pasteur, whose germ theory replaced the idea of spontaneous generation, and many others who stood in opposition to the theory of evolution. Included in Chapter 6 is a description of the Declaration of Students of the Natural and Physical Scientists that was signed in 1864 by 717 scientists. In response to Darwinism, these scientists affirmed their confidence in the scientific integrity of Scripture. During the modern period, as Darwinism was becoming entrenched, there were noticeably fewer scientists of faith. These included William Ramsay, who studied radioactive decay and was the co-discoverer of argon and other inert gases, and Wernher von Braun, a German rocket scientist during World War II, who migrated to the United States after the war and became the director of NASA. Chapter 8 doesn't attempt to include biographies of scientists who are still living, but describes a dramatic revival of creationism. In addition to dozens of creationist organizations, there are now thousands of Bible-believing scientists today who are proposing creation as a serious scientific alternative to evolution. The appendix contains over 40 of the 101 scientists from the book, listed in chronological order along with their discipline, discovery, invention, or contribution. The index contains all scientists from the book, listed in alphabetical order with page numbers. There are lots of ways that the compatibility of science and faith can be emphasized in your classroom all year long. The next few slides contain suggestions for a kickoff project, ideas to use throughout the year, and ways to incorporate this topic into a year-end science fair. You may choose to do them all or select individual activities from the lists. Perhaps starting with a few and building from year to year will be the most practical option. If you are using the By Design science textbooks from Kendall Hunt Religious Publishing, a beginning of the year kickoff would fit nicely with the Inquiry Handbook Science Skills section at the beginning of each book. The content of the 6th grade book would fit especially well. In addition, you may wish to show a set of 4 short Origins Curriculum Resources videos that help to explain the scientific process. Video 3 includes an interview with a modern scientist whose belief in the Bible has been beneficial in furthering his scientific research. An additional resource you may want to check out is this set of DVDs from the Geoscience Research Institute called Thinking Creation. The first DVD in this series is called The Christian Roots of Science and provides much more information on the idea that modern science began and flourished in a Christian environment. After an introduction that focuses on the compatibility of science and faith, focus on Chapter 3 of Men of Science, Men of God. Have each student select a scientist from the chapter to study. He or she could create a poster about the scientist and make a presentation to the class. Collect student posters and keep them to display at an end-of-the-year science fair. As a class, create a timeline to display on a wall or bulletin board. Add additional scientists to the timeline throughout the year. Include pictures, lifespans, and descriptions or illustrations of their scientific achievements. Save the timeline to display at an end-of-the-year science fair as well. Include believing scientists from outside the book as well. In addition to the scientists that are featured throughout the By Design textbooks, the book In 6 Days contains 50 PhD scientists who believe in creation that could be included. From the remaining chapters of the book, read about one scientist per day, perhaps after lunch or at the beginning of science class, or invest in multiple copies for students to read independently. As you work your way through the rest of the book, keep track of which scientists would fit best into the 4 different units, life science, human body, earth and space science, or physical science. Then another year you can read each biography during the unit where it fits best. Invite a Christian scientist to speak to your class. Have students explore the websites of creationist organizations like those mentioned in Chapter 8 to learn about scientists who believe. Be sure to include these: the Geoscience Research Institute, which is staffed by Seventh-day Adventist scientists, the Discovery Institute, the Institute for Creation Research, which includes a whole section of Man of Science, Man of God features, and Answers in Genesis. Once a month, show a video featuring scientists who believe in creation in the Bible. A great source for these kinds of videos is Illustra Media, which has made The Privileged Planet, Metamorphosis, Unlocking the Mystery of Life, and Flight, the Genius of Birds. Near the end of the year, have a science fair. On a prominent wall, display the class timeline created throughout the school year. Beside their regular science fair projects, have each student display the poster he or she created about an individual scientist at the beginning of the year. Begin the science fair with a short worship program that includes music and readings related to God's creation. Consider dividing students into groups to find music, scripture, beautiful pictures, and meaningful quotes from famous Christian scientists that would go with the 4 science units: life science, human body, earth and space science, and physical science. Quotes could be read by students dressed up as the scientist who made the statement. Consider creating a responsive reading to get the audience involved. Without belaboring the point, weave science and the worship of God together.